Ladies and gentlemen, girls and boys, may I have your attention, please? Are you ready to engage in a mind-blowing experience and hear talks about life, technology, entertainment, and business? The next episode of Hipther Talks starts in 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, go.
Hi everyone, Zoltan here from Hipther Talks. We're back again this week. Today I'm talking with Floris Assies, founder and CEO at Better World Casinos, and today we're going to talk about sustainability, ESG, and wait for it, it's in the gaming industry. So Floris, nice to have you here.
Nice to be here. Thanks for the opportunity.
Yeah, it's our pleasure. So before we dive into the questions, just could you share a bit about your background and your passion for sustainability and what led you to create Better World Casinos?
Yeah, for sure. So my name is Floris Assies. I'm Dutch. I live in Spain, and I lived in many different places around the world. And this is also where I think my passion for sustainability comes from. I've lived in the Middle East as a child. I spent time in India, in China, and in other places where I've seen all forms of poverty and pollution, and there's always that has created this urge of like, hey, we can improve a lot of things in the world, and I always wanted to do something with that. But at some point in 2016, I was living in Malta, and had an opportunity to get a job in iGaming SEO. And this is where the whole thing started. Since 2018, I run a small agency doing SEO and content marketing for mainly casino affiliates. And after doing that for several years, I at some point, about 2 years ago, it started to dawn on me that I like SEO a lot, and the industry is fascinating and having a good time. But there is always this thing of sustainability in the background that I thought, like, okay, let's see if this can be combined. And so one on one is came together, and the idea of Better World Casinos was created to develop a platform where players can find the most sustainable casino brands, and and then also for businesses to have a conversation for the B2B to discuss ESG and sustainability and what this means.
All right. So since you mentioned the ESG, I'm going to direct you the first question and ask you, how do you see the connection between ESG, sustainability, and the iGaming industry?
Yeah. Well, people interested in these topics are very likely aware of the challenges that we face in the world, and also the Sustainable Development Goals of the United Nations. There's a lot of stuff to be done there's a lot of room for improvement, and all industries in the world need to play their part. So of course also the gambling industry. And so this comes on one hand down to the environmental aspect, their footprint, their scope 1, 2, 3 emissions, and the choices they make and the impact they have on society, not only for responsible gambling, which is of course very important, but there's so much more to it. And this can definitely be put higher on the agenda and given more attention, I think.
All right. And maybe can you explain to the audience how Better World Casino serves as a bridge between conscious gamblers and sustainable iGaming brands?
Yeah. So just to be a bit prudent, it's a startup. It's an idea in progress. So the website is there. It started with the idea that players in any country, preferably regulated countries, they have a lot of choice of brands, gambling operators to choose from, and honestly, more or less, many of them have the same offerings. You play more or less the same games from the same provider, same payment methods. So where can the brands really distinguish themselves? So with the brand they are, and also the attention to ESG they give, and what role they play in society. So I decided all this information is there, but it's very opaque. It's not easy to find and to make a decision on which brand is more sustainable than the other. So this was my idea, to make this information more transparent, more accessible for the players. and eventually create a ranking where we say, okay, this casino brand or operator does more or about either environment or social than another. So if you have the choice between casino A and B, and they more or less offer the same user experience, but one does more about sustainability than the other, then for me as a conscious consumer, it's an easy choice. Then I would rather choose brand A than B. And I think other players, if they have this option, if they have this information clearly presented to them, that they would make the same choice. And there's nobody really offering this kind of information. And everybody talks about how to play the games and where to get the best bonus and what's the best customer service. But where the brands can really distinguish themselves is on this topic. So this was the one hand. Also, my background as a casino affiliate was very obvious. But then on the other part, it's the business to business side, the B2B, where I would love to be seen as an authority on the topic and be involved in the dialogue and putting this topic higher on the agenda.
Yeah,
and connecting people, building the network where people can, well, where do you want to go, or what do you have to think about when you deal with ESG as a gambling operator or as a provider or as a payment provider or any stakeholder in the business, actually.
All right, you have our full support in the media, and you mentioned that many of the affiliate businesses run on reviews, ranking casinos which are doing better jobs, having them positive reviews and most probably some negative reviews as well. And so you have the unique focus on sustainability in the gambling industry. And what specific factors does BetterWorldCasino.com consider when selecting sustainable iGaming brands and recommend them to the players? And maybe point out some of the negative aspects as well, if you're going to have a naughty list.
Yeah, well, it's to come up with the concept was very easy, but to then put it into practice is very hard. So what I've started with, Better World Casinos at the moment, we only focus on the UK, and being a very regulated market with very high standards, and of course gambling being quite popular there, and good value of players. So I've made a list of the 20 top operators within the UK, and for those I'm now working on creating reviews. So basically my website, you can also read it on the website, there are 3 types of reviews: tier 1, tier 2, tier 3. So tier 1 is just your basic review as you would find on any affiliate casino site, which bonus, which games, which customer service, which licenses, etc. Tier 2 is really a dive into the literature. So a literature research where we go into, for public registered companies, it's easier because they have the annual report, the financial report, which often nowadays concludes part of sustainability reporting. So we can, or I can get an idea of where they stand on their emissions, on their contribution to society, on taxes and all those kind of things. But these documents are long, they're difficult. I'm not yet a real expert on the topic, so it's really hard to make this complex language, difficult language, also easy to understand for a player who probably never really gave it much thought. So this process takes a lot of time, and my focus right now is on the tier 2 reviews, where first step really it comes to transparency. So how willing is a company to talk about this topic and make this information available? Because a lot of them, especially the private health companies, they don't really share this information. So there's already step 1. If they're not transparent, my basic thought in this is that nowadays with online, with the online means we have and sharing information, it's so easy. If you don't share information, if you're not transparent and you're purposefully opaque, then maybe you have something to hide, So that's already step 1. If you're transparent, then that's a good step. And it's also impossible to already be very sustainable. I mean, it's a very complex matter. It's nobody in our current society and how the economy works can claim to be 100% sustainable, because society just doesn't facilitate that yet. This is a transition that we need to go through. So then the second step is looking into their values. What do they give importance, and how high is ESG on the agenda? So this is what I'm now trying to map out and make transparent from the brands that I'm focusing on. And then in the future, next year, when hopefully I'm able to build a team and start to get more resources, invest more resources into this, then will be the tier 3 reviews, where we really start to get empirical information. Go out there and do surveys with the brands or with the players, and then update these things yearly to see also who makes progress, because it's easy to say that you want to be sustainable, but you have to show it. Your actions speak louder than words.
All right. So you have experience in search engine optimization and affiliate marketing, something I wish I had in 2007 when I was an affiliate, but back then it was the Wild West. We were building things as we went along.
Lots has changed.
Managed to survive many Google updates, but then I exited the affiliate world. But kept the experience of search engine optimization, and hence built our news website. So what I want to ask is, how does all this experience influence the design and functionalities of Better World Casinos?
Yeah, cool question. I am not a developer or a designer. I always see myself, I'm also not a content creator. I see myself more of a content facilitator. I've studied international communication, and marketing was a part of my studies, and I always had this aversion to marketing. It's like creating need, creating a desire, and then just stuff products and services down somebody's throat and make them buy it. That's really not how I think, or so. This is also why I instantly actually fell in love with SEO, because people are searching with an intrinsic motivation for some kind of answer to solving a problem, and you have to facilitate the content, the information that you provide, in such a way that it can either, on one hand, be understood by the algorithm and then presented, and then being defined as being better than the competitor, so you end up high in the ranking. And once they find that, and once you are able to provide that information and that solves the problem that they're trying to solve, then you build this relationship and trust, and that helps you. Well, that helps them convert to buy whatever product they're looking for. So in our case, where to play poker or slots or whatever. And but then, so that's saying I'm not a builder or designer. So for my website, I really just kept it to the basics. Work with the tools that I'm familiar with. So on my website, I've run always on WordPress. I chose a WordPress theme that I've been using for all my other clients as well, and that my developer is also very familiar with, and just keep it as simple as possible. Yeah, I mean, of course, it would be beautiful at some future when we have the resources to really build a site. And this is also, I'm struggling with, my rating system is not your standard bonus games, and so I want to make this more complex, and these are things that would require modification to the theme and to the CMS maybe that I'm using. But for the time being, just keep it simple. Yeah, to be able to focus on the content. It's basically it's very easy.
Yeah, because you mentioned that beyond being a guide for players, you mentioned that you also aim to facilitate conversation and best practice sharing and inspiration around ESG, and especially in relationship to gambling. And could you share some more about the initiatives or programs you have in place to achieve this?
Yeah, of course. So again, this is all still in startup phase. So first thing is that I'm working on is creating on my first podcast, my own podcast, where I will be discussing these topics with people in the industry. I already recorded twice, and I mainly learned how not to do a podcast. So that was so I'm hopefully re-recording those, and so this is on one hand. Then, so I want to have these podcasts to have the conversation and for people to be inspired. Okay, if there's something about ESG in gambling, what are the topics they talk about? How do you put this into practice? Then second, of course, is building the network, creating getting the people involved that are responsible for ESG or for sustainability within the companies, within the operators and the providers. Last year, I came into touch with SD Certified, and we've been working closely together, and we have a partnership now where so they are really B2B focused on making any casino operator more sustainable. So they assess, they audit, they help with strategy, they help with training and measuring, benchmarking, and then to take it beyond. So beyond compliance specifically, because there's a lot of talk about compliance always if you go to the events. But my standpoint on compliance is if you're not compliant, you're out of business. So nothing to brag about there. If you have your business in order and you're able to operate, then you are compliant, but you need to go beyond compliance. And not just compete, but you want to be a leader. I mean, we see that I hope that players are demanding this, but we also see it from employees, for example, that a lot of the new generation, they want to work for companies that do something that are sustainable. So there's always a lot of competition in the iGaming to get the right talent for marketing, for iGaming, for product, for whatever. If you want to compete, that the young talents want to work for sustainable companies. So this is another reason for a company to put this on their agenda. So yeah, the podcast, building a network, and then just sharing those stories, creating them into content. So written, spoken videos. It's all out there on the table. It's just that it's a one-man show at the moment, and also running an agency on the side. So it's a lot to do. I hope that little by little I'm making progress. I definitely have momentum now, and these opportunities of being a guest on the podcast are very welcome for that too.
All right.
Also a shout out for people to join me. If anybody's out there listening to this, and think, like I want to do something with sustainability in gambling, then please reach out to me. I would love to hear from you and have a conversation.
Exactly. Yeah, that's why we are using this podcast to promote people and you must already been talking to people about your project and about promoting sustainability within the industry. And I just want to ask, were there any challenges when you faced while trying to promote sustainability within the iGaming industry? And how did you overcome these?
Yeah, well, the first time I really started talking about it publicly was in the IGB Amsterdam in 2021, and just carefully pitching here and there and see what people would think, because you don't want people to run off with your idea, and but I'm not afraid about it anymore, because most people are like, all right, that's interesting, but
that's people, what I wanted. That's what
people tend to laugh a bit around it and make fun about it, like, yeah, come on, sustainable industry, because we are in a great entertainment industry. But I think if most people in the industry are very honest with themselves, they're not in here to entertain, but to make good money. Once you're in, it's hard to get out, because we get used to the money going around in this. Same for me. But 2 months ago, or last month, time flies, I was in Malta, Casino Beach, and specifically because I was in IGB for a client, but this was really for me, for Better World Casino, and to really start pitching and talking about it. And had a lot of conversations. And what was fascinating was to, as I just mentioned, first reaction is a bit like, oh, okay, funny or original, or maybe a bit strange. But then so I had these very clear, three clear points that it's for the player. Consumers want sustainable fashion, sustainable tourism, sustainable everything. So why not also sustainable gambling? Then second, the new generation coming into workforce wants to work for sustainable companies. And third, maybe most importantly even, is that from regulators, from legislation, in the EU, they're working now on the corporate sustainable reporting directive. Yeah, which will be implemented as of next year, where big companies, so 20 or 40 million revenue and over 250 employees, need to report on their sustainability. double materiality. So that means the impact it has on you and you have on the environment and on society. And this is becoming mandatory. If you don't comply, again, with compliance, then you can get fined and etc. So companies need to start doing with this. So to come back to your question, what is the challenge? When I was explaining these things to people during the conversation, at some point I realized that the eyebrows start to drop a bit, and people start to think about these things, and maybe some people even start to think about this and never thought about it before, and that was really satisfying. That was really cool.
This was this year, this was this year.
So this was just in the Casino Beach this year, 2023.
Yeah, because in 2021, most probably nobody cared about it.
No, well, I know that there was something on Ice London as well. Unfortunately, I couldn't make it. But yeah, I think we see this coming back more and more at the events, at the summits. And love to be part of any roundtable discussion or maybe have a small talk about this on any event. Hopefully, well, maybe I can already spill the beans, but I'll be at SBC in Barcelona this year. And definitely we'll be talking about this. So if anybody's interested and want to meet me, come meet me there. So that's the challenge, is to make people think about it and how to deal with it, one conversation at a time. Just look somebody in the eyes and say like, okay, well, how do you see life? What's our role in it? And I sincerely believe with the reach that we have in the whole gambling industry, the amount of players worldwide, and the amount of people working in it, that we can have some serious impact without, people are always immediately afraid, like, oh, sustainability, I have to give up something and it's going to cost me money. But that's not the conversation to have. It's the opportunity that, and also the necessity to adapt to changing times, but also to, there's so much money going around with this. Just with a little bit, we can make a real big change. So, and that's the conversation I want to have with the people, to make them enthusiastic about the future and see how they can contribute to making things better.
All right. And how do you vision this future of the iGaming industry in terms of sustainability?
Yeah, that's constantly changing. I've recently, to refer to a book I've read, I've just picked it up for the second time, by the Dutch historian Rutger Bregman, Utopia for Realists. And let me see, what was it again? So utopia is not a real place, it's not something that's defined. Yeah. It's not a blueprint. I mean, you can see it as a blueprint, but then it's always unrealistic. But to have a spot on the horizon to travel towards and to aim towards. And I think that there is still, for many people, still a bit of taboo on the gambling industry, where it generally creates more problems. And most people are blind about the amount of entertainment and fun most people have with it, Most people enjoy gambling responsible. It's not a big problem for most people. Just a percentage has problems with it. And that's, of course, very serious, and we need to deal with it. But if we see, for example, at the history of lotteries have been around for thousands of years, and they were also often organized by governments to fund social or projects in society, to make public buildings, and also in the Netherlands, for example, my country, I'm not an expert on other countries, but I know in the Netherlands that the lotteries there were state-owned or are still owned, but big part of their revenue needs to be donated to charity. Or another example, how the licensing the Native Americans, giving them license to run casinos on their land, completely changed societies, where due to the casinos there was more employment, there was more money coming around, the revenues were being shared among, or the profits were being shared among the community, which dropped crime, improved education, decreased violence. It has this huge positive impact on society. That this is something that I envision, for gambling to more come out of the negative view of the people who don't gamble, basically, because I think those are the ones that mainly have this view, and to use it as leverage of for change. Yeah, it could be. Let's see.
All right. So, what actions or steps would you like to see in the iGaming industry stakeholders to take towards sustainability? Some baby steps, maybe.
Baby steps. Well, as I mentioned, transparency. Talk about it. Don't be afraid not to be perfect. But also don't use it as greenwashing. So put your words into action.
Yeah.
And so step one, make an inventory or have a clear idea of who your stakeholders are and the effect you have on them and how you can help them, and also on your environmental impact. Start with your scope 1, 2, 3 analysis. And within the gambling industry, it's mainly scope 3. And for the ones who are not familiar with the scope 1, 2, 3 emissions. So 1 is what you produce in-house. 2 is what is being produced, for example, from your energy company. You use energy which is produced somewhere, and there is an X amount of emissions of that. And scope 3 are your suppliers. So your whole supply chain. And especially in the supply chain, that's where the biggest sum of emissions are. You know, all the hardware we use, the office equipment, the electronics, the servers, all these kind of things. We can make real changes in procurement, how we buy those things, from who we buy. You know, many people underestimate that. So as a consumer, personally, I can buy an organically grown product or more fair trade product, and for my personal footprint, it has very little impact. But the impact you make is by supporting those brands, those companies who make those choices, that they can evolve their business and eventually make their product will become cheaper, and that way also available to others who can then also make the choice. And this is especially in gambling. You know, if we choose for office equipment. You put carpentry on the floor or on the walls or something. Choose sustainably sourced materials. Choose for products that are circular, that can be completely reused and not only downcycled or just burned. But so these kind of decisions, that's where the first steps are. Transparency and that way, awareness and becoming aware of the things the choices you make and the impact they have, and just take it from there and just try to do a little bit better every year.
Yeah. Either way, most of the gaming companies, the gambling companies, will be affected by the CSR, the reporting, because, like, if you take operators who have retail, they are definitely having plus 250 employees. So that's
yeah, for sure.
They fall onto that category, definitely. So most of the gaming companies have large base of employees. So yeah, they will bound to do the reporting. So, and that, just want to also ask if do you think that the current trend towards ESG in industries worldwide, not just the gaming industry, can significantly influence the iGaming industry in the near future, or it doesn't affect it?
So if the industry trends globally influence iGaming when it comes to ESG, yeah, for sure. Again, it's all about making choices and not necessarily maybe putting profit first. I think this is something that a lot of businesses need to adjust to. As I mentioned earlier, like sustainability, it costs money, and the bottom line means less profit, and that's bad for business. But let's go back to where it all started. Businesses and work is about solving problems. Exactly. And problems are either by satisfying a desire or averting suffering. You know, it's always one of those two. That's just first principle thinking, human behavior. Satisfy desire or avoid suffering. Now, in our case, we're satisfying desire. We're in the entertainment. So brands should be competing on what's the best entertainment, and then also in the most responsible way. The moment you start focusing on money, you start taking shortcuts. Because if somebody else focuses on this, and you can take a shortcut and then make more profit out of it, then of course, then that's your incentive. And as long as we're only working for our shareholders, and you know, we can't blame anybody from doing this. This is how the rules of the game are right now, and how they've developed for the last X hundred years. But this is a mindset that is very slowly changing, and this will happen in all industries. And again, so an office uses furniture, so the furniture production industry will become more sustainable and include circularity and
It's
those
a
kind of
whole
things.
chain. Yeah.
Yeah, and then the gambling operator has an office and needs furniture. So where are you going to buy your furniture from? And this is again, so your scope 3 emissions in your supply chain, you have to choose at some point. And this is also where, again, the legislation is very important, where companies are being held responsible of the problems down their supply chain. So if there's somebody down there who's doing something in a way that is causing some kind of harm, and there is an alternative that does less harm, then you should be making that choice. Very simple.
All right. So before I ask you the final question, I'm just curious. What is your opinion about carbon offsetting?
Interesting. In theory, a nice concept. We can say a lot about it. The shame is that in practice, it's just a way for people to make money, and there's a lot of scam, and there's a lot of
It's
and
not
then
the
even
solution.
with the certification and stuff, and you can be platinum certified offsetting, and in the end you have to go to zero. So as intermediate option, okay, maybe offsetting is, but you know, there's so much bullshit. Sorry for my language, but
No worries.
something that you know, a couple of months ago, big thing that in some country in Africa they had reserved this huge amount of rainforest for not being cut down. Yeah, come on, not being cut down was the first thing that we should be not doing. You know, we should not cut it down. Like, yeah, by not cutting it down, we save so much, and then we got credits out of it. Come on, guys, this is you can, and this is, you know, the creative again. When the aim is earning money and not solving problems, then you come to this kind of constructions that are just plainly wrong. But people make money of it. The system allows it. They're not doing anything illegal, so they get away with it. And again, this is the mindset that so slowly needs to be changing. It's not money first, it's problem solving first, you know, and that's also what's satisfying. In the end, when you die, it's not like, ooh, I made so much money. No, it's like, what cost did you have? And then money is a means to an end, you know, it should never be the goal.
Yeah. So my final question is, your website will be up and running with all the reviews very soon. And until then, what is your advice for conscious players looking to make more sustainable choices in their gaming experiences?
Yeah. So just first to come back to my website, it is up and running. It's more or less a proof of concept right now. But within the next 2 months, we're getting these 20 operators, UK operators, tier 2 reviews published. They're being written as we speak. And then players can come to my site and see, like, okay, which, based on social and environmental factors, whatever you find most important, which one scores the best. And then please subscribe sign up via my website, because I have a cap on profits and on salaries. So most of it is going into a foundation to invest the money back into society and good projects. Until then, play please at regulated companies. The gray and the black markets, stay away. And especially if you go for what a player can easily do, if you go for a public traded company operator, you know, like an 888 or a Betson Group or Entain or Kindred, whatever, go to their corporate website, have a look at their annual reports. There's a sustainability section in there. And this is dry stuff to read, though, you know, you really need to be into it. I mean, it's for me, it's my daily bread. I consume it. because I find it both interesting and then because I have a value for it. But yeah, that's where you can start. Or I can just already give a little bit of a shout out to companies that are doing well. Kindred is doing so far in the initial analysis, coming out really well. This week I've been working on 888 Holdings, which you said earlier, the betting shops and the land, the brick and mortar shops, they, because of them acquiring William Hill, they just grew, and their emission exploded because they have all these things. So there's a lot of development going on, very interesting. And
Tane as well.
And Tane is doing a lot. Aspire, who became Neon, who became Aristocrat. So, you know, and this also makes my work very difficult. But I last year I wrote a tier 2 review about Aspire, and then it became Neon. So then I have to review them, and now they're Aristocrats, and I have to look into them, and now they're beyond online. They're in bingo and lottery and land-based and everything. So this stuff becomes really complex really fast. So I really hope I can grow my team soon and get some people involved with this to help me with crunching all the data and making it consumable for players who are interested in these kind of things. Yeah.
All right. So then I thank you for your time. I know that the time is very valuable for you, and
it's the only thing we have in life. Yeah,
exactly. If you want to do some closing remarks, you're more than welcome.
Yeah. No, thanks for the opportunity. Loved it. I'm recording, like I said, my own podcast, and but haven't been published anything. So this is a great opportunity, good practice for me of how to do it properly, like you're doing. And no, I hope to see people at Barcelona. Or if not physically, always feel free to look me up on LinkedIn or via my website, betterworldcasinos.com, and get in touch if you're interested in anything sustainability or ESG in relation to the gambling industry. I'd be happy to talk about it anytime.
All right. So everyone, thank you for joining us. Thank you for tuning in. Make sure to subscribe. We'll be back next week with a different topic. Thank you.
Thank you for joining. Be sure to check back next week for the next Hipther Talks, and subscribe on Amazon Music, Overcast, Spotify, Google Podcast, Apple Podcast, iHeartRadio, SoundCloud, Mixcloud, and Pandora.